There is a place on Earth that exists because the planet refused to stop building it. Thousands of kilometers from any continent in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, volcanoes rising from the seafloor created a chain of islands that should have remained isolated forever. Yet today, more than 1.4 million people call these islands home. This is Hawaii, the Aloha State. Unlike any other US state, Hawaii is not connected to the North American continent. It is the only state made entirely of islands, the only state where active volcanoes continue to create new land, and the only state whose history, language, and identity were shaped by a Polynesian kingdom long before it became part of the United States. Here, emerald rainforests meet black lava fields. Towering sea cliffs stand just hours away from snow-covered volcanic summits. White, black, green, and even rare red sand beaches exist across the islands, an extraordinary diversity found in very few places on Earth. Hawaii is more than a tropical paradise. It is America's most remote state, one of its youngest landscapes, and perhaps its most extraordinary natural laboratory, where geology is still shaping the land, culture continues to evolve, and every island tells a story unlike anywhere else in the United States. This is not just another American state, it is a world of its own, the land that made itself. Hawaii is the only American state that is entirely volcanic in origin, and the volcanic process that created it is not finished. Kilauea, on the Big Island, has been erupting more or less continuously since 1983. The lava flows that it produces have, over the course of those eruptions, added hundreds of acres of new land to the southeastern coast of the island. Land that did not exist a generation ago. Land so new that it has no soil, no vegetation, nothing but black rock still cooling from its creation. Standing at the edge of an active lava flow, watching molten rock move slowly across the ground, glowing orange at its edges, hissing where it meets the ocean and sending plumes of steam into the air, is one of the most primal experiences available to a human being. You are watching the planet make itself. The process that has been happening on this spot and others like it across the geological history of Earth for billions of years is happening in front of you at a pace you can observe, in a landscape you can walk across. The older islands show what the volcanic landscape becomes over time. Kauai, the oldest of the main islands at approximately 5 million years, has been so thoroughly shaped by erosion, by the extraordinary rainfall of its interior, and by the relentless work of wind and wave on its coasts, that its original volcanic form is almost unrecognizable. The Waimea Canyon, sometimes called the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, is a gorge carved by the Waimea River through the volcanic rock of Kauai's interior, revealing layers of geological history and walls of red and orange and gray that drop more than a kilometer to the canyon floor. The Napali Coast on Kauai's northwestern shore is the result of 5 million years of erosion working on basalt, producing ridges so sharp and valleys so deep and cliffs dropping so precipitously to the sea that the coastline is essentially impassable by land and must be experienced by boat or by helicopter. Maui's Halakala is a dormant volcano. Its last eruption was approximately 500 years ago, and its summit, at 3,055 meters, is above the clouds for much of the year. The experience of driving to the summit before dawn and watching the sunrise from above the cloud layer, the sky turning from black to deep purple to orange and red, the clouds below catching the first light, the shadow of the mountain extending across the Pacific, is one of those experiences that people describe as transformative, and that the landscape seems to justify that description. The crater of Haleakala is one of the largest in the world, a landscape of cinder cones and lava flows. And the extraordinary silver sword plant, a species found nowhere else on Earth, adapted to the harsh alpine conditions of the summit, which lives for up to 90 years before flowering once and dying. Before any of the layers of migration and settlement that have made Hawaii what it is today, there were the Kanaka Maoli, the native Hawaiian people, whose ancestors arrived in these islands from the Marquesas Islands and later from Tahiti, navigating thousands of kilometers of open ocean in double-hulled canoes, guided by stars and currents and the behavior of birds and waves, in voyages that represent some of the most extraordinary feats of navigation in human history. The Polynesian settlement of Hawaii, which began approximately 1,500 years ago, produced a culture of remarkable sophistication and complexity. The Hawaiian system of land management, called the Ahupua, divided the islands into wedge-shaped sections that extended from the mountain summit to the ocean, ensuring that each community had access to resources from every ecological zone. From the highland forests where birds provided feathers for ceremonial regalia, to the agricultural lands of the valleys, to the fish ponds of the coast, to the ocean fisheries beyond, it was an ecological management system of considerable wisdom, one that sustained a population of perhaps 300,000 people on these islands for centuries without significant environmental degradation. The Hawaiian language, Olelo Hawaii, is one of the most melodic languages in the world, built from a small number of sounds that produce words of great fluidity and beauty. It came close to extinction in the 20th century, suppressed by colonization and the policies of assimilation that followed annexation. The Hawaiian language renaissance that began in the 1970s, with the establishment of Hawaiian language immersion schools, the revival of traditional practices, the reincorporation of Hawaiian language into public life, is one of the most successful indigenous language revitalization efforts in the world. Today, there are children growing up in Hawaii for whom Hawaiian is a first language, a reality that would have seemed impossible 50 years ago. The traditional practices that the Hawaiian cultural renaissance has revived are not museum pieces. Hula, the dance form that is the primary vehicle of Hawaiian oral tradition, encoding history, genealogy, cosmology, and cultural knowledge in movement and chant, is practiced today by thousands of Hawaiians at every level of skill and commitment. From the keiki hula of children learning their first steps to the masters of the hula halau, whose performances at the Merry Monarch Festival represent the pinnacle of the art form, wayfinding, the practice of navigating by stars and ocean and wind without instruments, has been revived through the Polynesian Voyaging Society, whose canoe Hokulea has sailed traditional routes across the Pacific to demonstrate the navigational knowledge of the ancestors and to inspire a new generation of Hawaiian cultural identity. The question of Hawaiian sovereignty, of the legal and political status of the native Hawaiian people and their relationship to the land that was taken from them through the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom in 1893, is not a historical debate. It is a contemporary political question that shapes Hawaiian politics and Hawaiian cultural life. The overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani, engineered by American businessmen with the support of the U.S. military, and the subsequent annexation of Hawaii by the United States in 1898, are events whose consequences are still being lived with and argued about and negotiated in Hawaii today. Oahu is called the gathering place, the meaning of its name in Hawaiian, and the description is accurate in a way that goes beyond etymology. 3/4 of Hawaii's population lives on Oahu, an island of 1,545 square kilometers. Honolulu, the state capital, is a city of 350,000 people that anchors a metropolitan area of nearly 1 million, dense, urban, expensive, and in the context of its Pacific setting, genuinely surprising. The Honolulu skyline, rising above the waterfront with Diamond Head, the extinct volcanic crater, visible behind it, is one of the most immediately recognizable urban landscapes in the world, combining the visual grammar of an American city with the tropical setting of the Pacific. Waikiki, the beachfront district that is the center of Hawaii's tourism industry, is both the most visited destination in the state and the place that Honolulu residents most consistently avoid. The 2-kilometer beach, lined with hotels and facing the gentle surf that made it the birthplace of modern surfing, is beautiful in the objective sense and relentlessly crowded in the practical one. The surf that breaks at Waikiki, small, consistent, forgiving, was where Duke Kahanamoku, the native Hawaiian swimmer and surfer who became the father of international surfing culture, taught the sport to visitors in the early 20th century, beginning a process of cultural export that eventually made surfing one of the most widely practiced sports in the world. Outside of Waikiki, Oahu is a city of neighborhoods with distinct characters and distinct communities. Chinatown, adjacent to downtown Honolulu, is one of the oldest and most culturally layered neighborhoods. A place where the Chinese immigration of the 19th century has been overlaid by successive waves of Vietnamese, Filipino, and other Asian communities, producing a neighborhood that is simultaneously historic and actively evolving. where traditional herbalists and noodle shops exist alongside contemporary art galleries and restaurants. Kaimuki, on the slopes above the Kahala neighborhood, is a neighborhood of small businesses and local restaurants. That represents the kind of community-scaled urban life that Honolulu does well when it is not trying to be something else. The North Shore, technically a different part of the island rather than a Honolulu neighborhood, but reachable in an hour from the city, is where the surfing culture of Hawaii reaches its most serious expression, where the waves of winter produce the largest rideable surf in the world, and where the Eddie Aikau Big Wave Invitational, which runs only when the waves at Waimea Bay exceed 6 meters, is one of the most anticipated events in the surfing calendar. Pearl Harbor, on the southern coast of Oahu, is a place where American military history and Hawaiian history intersect in ways that are both solemn and complicated. The attack of December 7, 1941, which brought the United States into World War II, happened here, in waters that were, at the time of annexation, part of the Hawaiian Kingdom on an island that the United States had taken possession of through a process of dubious legal legitimacy. The memorials at Pearl Harbor, the USS Arizona Memorial, which marks the site where more than 1,100 sailors and Marines died aboard the battleships sunk by the Japanese attack, draw millions of visitors each year and are places of genuine solemnity. They are also, for Native Hawaiian visitors, places where multiple layers of history intersect in ways that the official narrative of the memorial does not always fully acknowledge. The Hawaii that visitors encounter, the beaches, the hotels, the luau's, the helicopter tours over volcanoes, is a real Hawaii. But it is not the Hawaii in which most Hawaiians live their daily lives. The daily life of Hawaii is shaped first and most fundamentally by the cost of living, which is among the highest in the United States. The median home price in Hawaii is the highest of any state in the country. Groceries cost significantly more than on the mainland, because almost everything must be shipped across 3,900 kilometers of ocean. And the cost of that shipping is embedded in the price of every imported item. Gasoline is among the most expensive in the country. Utilities, particularly electricity generated in Hawaii primarily from imported oil, are the most expensive in the nation. These costs shape everything. They determine where people live. The geography of housing affordability in Hawaii is a geography of distance from the centers of employment and opportunity, with the people who can least afford the commute most often required to make it. They determine what people eat. The local food culture of Hawaii, with its emphasis on what can be grown and caught in the islands, is not merely a cultural preference but a practical response to the cost of imported food. They determine whether people stay or leave. The outmigration of native Hawaiians and long-term residents from the islands, driven by housing costs that make homeownership an increasingly distant prospect for people without significant family wealth, is one of the most serious social trends in contemporary Hawaii. The local food culture of Hawaii is one of its most distinctive features and one of the clearest expressions of the archipelago's multicultural character. Plate lunch, a meal of 2 scoops of rice, macaroni salad, and a protein, is the foundational form. A structure that accommodates an enormous range of ingredients and reflects the working-class, multi-ethnic origins of Hawaii's food culture. The macaroni salad that comes with plate lunch is not the macaroni salad of the mainland. It is richer, creamier, simpler, and specific to Hawaii in a way that is difficult to explain and immediately recognizable to anyone who grew up eating it. Spam musubi, a block of rice topped with a slice of spam wrapped in nori, is one of those foods that sounds, in description, like a poor idea and is, in practice, an extremely scoring one. The deep penetration of spam into Hawaiian food culture is a direct consequence of World War II, when canned meat became a primary protein source for military personnel and local workers and embedded itself permanently in the local diet. Hawaii consumes more spam per capita than any other state in the country, and has done so for decades with complete unapologetic commitment. Poke, raw fish, typically tuna or octopus, seasoned with soy sauce, sesame oil, green onions, and various other additions, depending on the preparation, is a Hawaiian food that the mainland discovered in the 2010s and immediately turned into a trend. In Hawaii, poke is not a trend. It is simply food sold in grocery stores and fish markets, eaten as a casual meal, prepared in dozens of variations that reflect the Japanese and Korean and Hawaiian culinary traditions that contributed to its development. The mainland version of poke, served in fast casual restaurants in bowls with quinoa and avocado, is related to Hawaiian poke in the way that a photograph is related to the thing it depicts. the shave ice of Hawaii, not to be confused with the snow cone of the mainland. A comparison that Hawaiians find mildly insulting is a dessert of such specific texture and such particular flavor that it functions as a marker of cultural belonging. True Hawaiian shave ice uses ice that has been shaved, not crushed, to a consistency that is almost powder fine, that absorbs the flavored syrups poured over it, rather than letting them pool at the bottom of the cup. That when done correctly has a texture that is closer to snow than to ice, served with a scoop of vanilla ice cream at the bottom and azuki beans, another contribution of Japanese food culture. Pie. It is the dessert that people who grew up in Hawaii describe when they describe the taste of home. The multicultural reality. Hawaii is the only state in the United States in which no single ethnic group constitutes a majority of the population. The population of Hawaii is approximately 37% Asian, Japanese, Filipino, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and other Asian communities whose presence reflects the labor immigration of the 19th and early 20th centuries, when sugar and pineapple plantations brought workers from across Asia to the islands. Whose presence reflects the labor immigration of the 19th and early 20th centuries, when sugar and pineapple plantations brought workers from across Asia to the islands. Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders constitute approximately 10% of the population. White residents are approximately 25%. Hispanic and Latino residents are approximately 10%. And the remainder are of mixed race, a category that, in Hawaii, is not a complexity to be explained, but a norm, a commonality, a reflection of the degree to which the communities of Hawaii have intermarried and intermingled over generations. The concept of local, in Hawaii, the word has a specific meaning that goes beyond geography, is the cultural identity that has developed out of this mixture. To be local in Hawaii is not primarily a matter of ethnicity, it is a matter of cultural fluency, of knowing the food and the music and the slang, of having a relationship with the land that is not touristic, of understanding instinctively the particular social codes of a place where many cultures coexist in close proximity, and have developed, over generations, the norms that make that coexistence work. Pidgin, Hawaii Creole English, is the linguistic expression of this multicultural reality. It developed on the sugar plantations of the 19th century as a common language among workers who spoke Japanese, Cantonese, Portuguese, Hawaiian, and English. And it has evolved over more than a century into a fully developed Creole language with its own grammar, its own phonology, its own vocabulary, and its own literature. Pidgin is not broken English. It is its own language, one that carries within it the history of Hawaii's labor and immigration and cultural mixing, and one that functions as a marker of local identity as clearly as any other cultural sign. The Japanese-American community of Hawaii has a history of particular significance. The internment that affected Japanese Americans on the mainland during World War II did not happen in Hawaii, where Japanese Americans constituted such a large proportion of the population that interning them would have been logistically impossible and economically devastating. Instead, Japanese Americans in Hawaii demonstrated their loyalty through military service, producing the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, a unit composed almost entirely of Japanese Americans from Hawaii and the mainland, which became the most decorated unit of its size in the history of the United States Army. Surfing as culture. No discussion of Hawaii is complete without surfing, and no discussion of surfing is complete without Hawaii. Surfing was not invented in Hawaii. The practice of riding waves on wooden boards existed in Polynesia before the Hawaiian Islands were settled. But it was developed here, refined here, and from here exported to the world. The ancient Hawaiians surfed on boards that could reach 6 meters in length, carved from koa wood. And surfing was not a recreational activity in the modern sense, but a practice embedded in Hawaiian culture and spirituality, associated with royalty and with the relationship between humans and the ocean. The surfing culture that developed on the north shore of Oahu in the 1950s and 1960s, when the big wave spots of Waimea Bay and Pipeline and Sunset Beach began to attract the most adventurous surfers in the world, created the foundation of the global surfing industry and the global surfing culture that now encompasses hundreds of millions of practitioners on every continent. The pipeline, the wave that breaks over a shallow reef off Ihukai Beach on the North Shore, producing a hollow, cylindrical wave of extraordinary power and extraordinary beauty, remains the most famous wave in the world, the benchmark against which all other waves are measured, the wave that defines what surfing at its most serious and most committed looks like. Eddie Aikau, the native Hawaiian surfer and lifeguard who became a legend on the North Shore in the 1960s and 1970s, who was lost at sea during a voyage on the Hokulea in 1978, is memorialized in a phrase that functions in Hawaii as both tribute and principle. Eddie would go. The phrase means that when the conditions are extreme, when the waves are beyond what ordinary courage can accommodate, Eddie Aikau would paddle out. It has become a statement about a certain kind of Hawaiian character, the willingness to face what is difficult rather than wait for easier conditions. The surf culture of Hawaii is not separate from the broader Hawaiian cultural renaissance. The surfers who shaped the North Shore in its formative years were predominantly local, many of them native Hawaiian or part Hawaiian, and the culture they created was an expression of a relationship with the ocean that runs through Hawaiian identity in ways that go deeper than sport. The ocean is not, for Hawaiians, a recreational resource. It is a presence, a provider, a spiritual reality. The surfer who paddles out into large surf is entering a relationship with something much older and much larger than the act of riding a wave. The tourism economy and its tensions. Hawaii's economy is built on tourism to a degree that creates a dependency that the state is simultaneously grateful for and uncomfortable with. Tourism accounts for approximately 21% of Hawaii's GDP and employs directly or indirectly a significant portion of the state's workforce. The 10 million visitors who arrive in Hawaii each year, a number that is roughly 7 times the state's resident population, generate the revenue that sustains the hotels and restaurants and tour operators and retail businesses that are the primary employers in much of the state. They also generate the congestion, the environmental pressure, the housing cost inflation, and the cultural friction that are the unavoidable consequences of receiving 10 million visitors in a place that is, in geographic terms, very small. The beaches that are the primary attraction of Hawaii are being loved, in some cases, past the point of sustainability. The coral reefs that give the water its color and support the marine ecosystems that locals and visitors alike depend on are under pressure. From warming ocean temperatures, from runoff, from physical damage by snorkelers and divers, and from the chemical compounds in certain sunscreens. The hiking trails of the Napali coast and Haleakala and the other signature natural areas of the islands are experiencing visitor volumes that their ecosystems were not designed to absorb. The COVID-19 pandemic, which reduced visitor arrivals to a fraction of their normal levels in 2020 and 2021, produced a moment of genuine reflection in Hawaii about the tourism dependency. The residents who remained reported cleaner water, quieter trails, less traffic, and a quality of life that the pre-pandemic visitor volumes had made difficult to access. The question of whether Hawaii wants to return to 10 million visitors per year and on what terms is a question that the pandemic made possible to ask in a way that the economics of normal times made uncomfortable. The over-tourism debate in Hawaii is also a sovereignty debate. The land that visitors come to experience was not always available for them to visit on these terms. The beaches, the sacred sites, the natural areas that have become components of a tourism product were, in many cases, places of cultural and spiritual significance, whose transformation into visitor attractions reflects the same process of dispossession that converted the Hawaiian kingdom into an American territory. The resentment that some residents feel toward the visitor industry is not simply the resentment of crowding and congestion. It is something older and deeper. A feeling that the most beautiful and the most sacred things about this place are being consumed by people who do not understand what they are consuming. The challenges of paradise. Hawaii's challenges are the challenges of a place that the world wants more of than it can sustainably provide. The housing crisis is the most immediate. The combination of limited land, islands are, by definition, finite, high demand from both residents and investors, and the cost structures of an island economy where construction materials must be shipped across 3,900 kilometers of ocean, has produced housing prices that are the highest in the United States and that are effectively excluding a generation of Hawaii-born residents from the possibility of owning a home in the place where they grew up. The native Hawaiian population is disproportionately affected, a cruel irony in a place where the indigenous people have a historical and cultural claim to the land that precedes everyone else's. The military presence: Hawaii hosts a significant concentration of U.S. military facilities, including Pearl Harbor Naval Station, Hickam Air Force Base, Schofield Barracks, and others. Occupies a substantial portion of the land area of Oahu and contributes significantly to the local economy, while also contributing to the housing pressure, the traffic, and the environmental impact that affect quality of life for residents. The relationship between the military and the civilian population of Hawaii is complex, economically interdependent, culturally distinct, and historically fraught in ways that connect to the annexation and to the events of World War II. The environmental pressures on Hawaii's ecosystems are among the most serious in the United States. Hawaii has the highest rate of species extinction of any state in the country, a consequence of the island ecosystem's vulnerability to introduced species and to human modification of habitat. The birds that evolved in Hawaii's forests over millions of years in the absence of land predators have been devastated by the introduction of rats, mongooses, and avian diseases carried by introduced mosquitoes. The coral reefs are bleaching under warming ocean temperatures. The invasive species, the koki frogs whose nighttime chorus has transformed the soundscape of the Big Island, the fountain grass that carries wildfire into areas that historically did not burn, the little fire ants that have made outdoor activity miserable in affected areas, are altering the ecology of the islands in ways that are difficult to reverse. Climate change presents Hawaii with challenges that are both global and specifically local. Rising sea levels threaten the low-lying coastal areas where much of the population lives and where much of the tourism infrastructure is located. Increasing ocean temperatures affect the coral reefs and the fish populations that depend on them. More intense tropical storms, which have historically affected Hawaii less severely than other Pacific island groups, but whose intensity is increasing with ocean warming, represent a growing threat to infrastructure and communities. So why do people stay in a place that is expensive beyond the reach of many, where the housing crisis is squeezing out the people who were born here, where the environment is under pressure and the political questions are unresolved? And the dependency on tourism creates a relationship with the outside world that is simultaneously sustaining and corrosive? They stay because of the ocean. Not the ocean as scenery, though it is among the most beautiful scenery on Earth, but the ocean as presence, as the thing that surrounds you, that you can hear from almost anywhere on the island, that shapes the weather and the light and the temperature and the smell of the air. The ocean that Hawaiians have been navigating and fishing and surfing for 1,500 years. The ocean that is not background but foreground, not decoration but reality. They stay because of the aloha spirit. A phrase that has been so thoroughly commercialized that it has lost much of its meaning in the tourism context, but that refers to something real in the culture of Hawaii. The aloha spirit is not simply friendliness, it is a philosophy of relationship, of approaching other people with openness and generosity, and the recognition that connection is more valuable than distance. It is a way of being in the world that Hawaii developed in the particular conditions of island life, where the people around you are the people you will always be around, and treating them with generosity is not an ideal but a practical necessity. They stay because the landscape, the particular combination of ocean and mountain and tropical vegetation and volcanic rock, and the quality of the light at every hour of the day is specific to these islands and not reproducible anywhere else. The green of the windward valleys of Oahu after rain, the red of the cinder cones of Haleakala at sunset, the black of the new lava on the Big Island, still warm from the Earth's interior, next to the turquoise of the ocean it has just entered. These are not generic tropical images. They are specific to these specific islands. And the people who have grown up seeing them carry them as a definition of beauty that nothing else quite satisfies. They stay because the culture, The hula and the surfing and the pigeon and the plate lunch and the shave ice and the music of the slack key guitar and the sound of the ukulele and the chant of the kahuna and the navigation by stars across open ocean is theirs. It belongs to them in the particular way that a culture belongs to the people who created it and maintained it and transmitted it across generations. And leaving it means leaving that belonging behind. Hawaii is not paradise in the way that the tourism industry sells paradise. A frictionless, conflict-free, perpetually sunny escape from the difficulties of ordinary life. It is a real place, with real problems, inhabited by real people who are living through genuine challenges with the same combination of resilience and frustration and love for their home that people anywhere bring to the experience of living somewhere complicated. But it is also, genuinely, one of the most beautiful places on Earth. And the people who live here know it, not as a tourist slogan, but as a daily fact. Visible every morning when they open their eyes, and the ocean is there, and the mountains are there, and the light is doing something extraordinary with both of them. That knowledge is not nothing. It is, for many people, everything. This is Hawaii, and this is why people stay.